What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein, alongside Ben McDonald. Ben, we have a special guest who has been gracious enough to return to us this evening and talk some NBA. But first, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Watching some great basketball, and as you said, we are honored to welcome back Jason Cordner. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back on.
So, for those who did not hear our interview with Jason a couple weeks ago, Jason works with us in the Zone, pumping out content over there. He's also an author at The Source, and he's been posting some great articles about one of my favorite players of all time, Jay Kidd, potentially coming back to Brooklyn to coach the Nets. Some thoughts on an MLB bubble playoff scenario, and he'll have a special article dropping hopefully tomorrow, Wednesday, when this podcast runs, and we'll have him plug at the end of the show. But Jason, just to get into the swing of things, man, I mean, it's been 2 weeks since the restart down on the NBA campus. I made a promise last week I'm going to stop calling it the bubble. But, I mean, just tell us the overall vibe. How's it going down there? You know, you've been there close to a month now. And talk about any games you've got to go to and just what you're seeing and hearing down there.
Well, the vibe has definitely gotten and improved. A lot of players and a lot of media is pretty much, they're like, okay, we're here. We're going to make the best of it. So the vibe is definitely picking up. The food's gotten better, if that helps, because that's always a plus. And, players are talking more to the media, and everybody's getting along. There's a lot of kumbaya. And what makes it so special is, like, other leagues are taking notice of this. So, like, people are congratulating the NBA because they were the first to, like, really get this bubble thing going. And between the NBA and NHL, not one positive COVID testing in the last month. So that's a great testament of both the organization, but more so the NBA for being the first one out the box to take the initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised you said kumbaya. I don't know if it says kumbaya between the Clippers and the Blazers, but we have a couple of little rivalries going on there. But other than that, I mean, what have you been surprised by anything you've seen? Have there been any games you've been to where you've noticed anything kind of picking up? Any rivalries starting to grow here as guys sort of settle in?
Well, definitely the talk of the town is definitely the Clippers and the Blazers. But I don't know about you guys, but I personally believe that is all subliminal psychoanalysis. They want the Portland Trailblazers to take out the Los Angeles Lakers for them. They want them to do their dirty work. It's some old school 1990 Knicks and Heat, or one of those kind of rivalries from the 90s. Like it's all mental games. They want to get. Look what happened the next night after they kind of like attacked Damian Lillard's credibility. He came out there, dropped 51. The Blazers haven't really looked back since, and I just think they were just trying to motivate Dame just to get him ready for the possible playing game against the Grizzlies or to start the Phoenix Suns.
Oh, yeah, we'll have plenty of time to get into those Western Conference matchups a little later on in the show. But, man, that Paul George Dame back and forth on Instagram, I mean, Dame cut deep, talking about Paul George switching teams. And the ironic thing about that, Jason, is that Paul George was never a free agent. He was traded every single time. So it's not like he was hopping teams on his own. I mean, I think he had a partial role in orchestrating a trade to the Clippers. But other than that, I mean, he got traded to Oklahoma City, a small market to a small market. Now he's playing on a big-time stage in LA. But I'm really hoping these two teams meet in a series, which means no Bron. So it's going to be very interesting as the playoffs get up and running next week.
Yeah,
but I feel like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I also feel like, if the Blazers get in, this looks like 99 Knicks all over again. I feel like they match up perfectly with the Lakers, and their bigs can neutralize the Lakers' bigs. And for what I've seen in the bubble, the Lakers have no answer for a strong point guard.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, one of the things that comes across on TV is just how locked in Dame is, the way that Melo's looking. I mean, how about Gary Trent Jr.? I mean, who had heard of Gary Trent Jr. before the bubble? And now that dude looks like Kyle Korver shooting threes. I mean, he's just coming off these screens, just raining fire. And you know what, Jason, we got to give you credit because you called it. We had you on. You said, I think the Blazers are going to get in there. They're looking really good. And they have been the giant killer so far. So, I mean, have you been surprised at all at just how good they have been, despite your kind of predictions?
I'm not surprised by how well they've been because I figured they're one of those teams where like they're not a traditional 8 seed. If everybody was healthy and they played from the beginning of the season, they're going to top 4 seed in the West. And people forget that even without Melo, they made it to the conference finals last year. So I'm not too surprised how stellar they're playing. I'm more surprised at how competitive the Western Conference race is. Like even everybody thought if anybody was going to probably get the 8 seed, it would have probably been the Pelicans because they had an easier schedule. But that didn't turn out to be the case. Whereas the Spurs, the Suns, all playing competitive, great basketball. Even the Nets we alluded to in our pre-talk. A lot of teams that came in this bubble that was probably just like trying to like find some rhythm. They're doing more than just finding rhythm.
Oh, for sure. I mean, right now, as we're talking, the Blazers are locked in a tight one with the Mavericks. So hopefully we can get a final there and update the seeding. So I got to ask, though, because you had the Blazers pegged, as Ben said. So out of all the other surprise teams that are really making some noise in the bubble, what other team stands out to you right off the jump?
It's got to be the Phoenix Suns. They're undefeated. I believe they're now 8-0. If not, I believe they're 8-0 now. So definitely didn't see that coming. And they were at the bottom. They were like right there lumped in with Sacramento as like teams that shouldn't even be here, but they got the invitation. People assumed they was probably going to be the Washington Wizards of the Western Conference. Just go there and, get smacked up in 8 games. And they've been doing the opposite. And Booker is just clicking on all cylinders. And they have a legit opportunity here to leapfrog Memphis and get in that playing game against the Blazers. The Blazers are locked in for that playing game, but many assumed they would have been against the Memphis Grizzlies that was holding down the 8 seed. But once things start falling apart, and it was just inexperience is showing, and now the young experience of the Suns, coached by Monty Williams, who's very underrated head coach, head coach. He got those guys believing in the system. So look out for that. I personally, before the play, I want to see that playing matchup. I will have to find a way to attend the game, but I definitely want to see that best 2 out of 3 matchup.
I mean, you got to give Monty Williams a ton of credit. First-year head coach, he's really turned that team around, and the young guys, especially, have just looked great. I mean, Devin Booker looks like Chris Paul in the bubble. He has guys on his hip. He knows how to play that pick and roll. He'll snake it. He'll come in. He'll get the guy on his hip, get into the lane, set up either the oop to one of the big guys or just an open jumper for himself. And then Mikal Bridges is just like swallowing guys. I mean, that's been crazy to watch. Like he's been maybe the best defensive player in the bubble. Cam Johnson just lighting it up. I mean, the Suns are fun right now. So I mean, I'm having a lot of fun watching them. I've caught the last few games. I mean, it would be awesome to see them get in. I mean, what do you make of some of those other teams? I mean, like teams like the Spurs are still. I mean, the Spurs have a tough route because they played less games, so they automatically lose any tiebreakers before it gets anywhere. But they have been pretty good, and this was a team that a lot of people left for dead, especially when LaMarcus Aldridge went down. What have you made of them so far in the bubble?
Same thing, it goes back to coaching, and Pop had those guys ready. It's like, listen, we're not here on vacation. We're not here to get fat off of continental food. We're gonna play some ball. We're gonna surprise some teams out here, and that's what they've been doing. They've been playing great ball. It's unfortunate that it was such a big hole for them to climb. So it's gonna come up a little short, but they definitely should hang their hats on their performance. I believe I think they have one more game left, and they're probably gonna finish the bubble like 8-2, which no one would expect that for the Spurs going in.
Yeah, the Spurs are kind of an afterthought to me just because of how well Phoenix is playing. And they've won for many years by being boring. And if they don't get into the playing game, it snaps one of the more significant playoff streaks in NBA history. So it's just funny with LaMarcus Aldridge opting out and Patty Mills was on the fence, I believe, before they left. I just haven't paid much attention to the Spurs, but it's interesting that they're still in it and New Orleans is eliminated. And we'll get into the bus teams in a little bit. I just wanted one more thought on the Suns. Do you agree with the sentiment that the 22 teams being invited, Phoenix being one of them, and how well they played, Do you think that salvaged Devin Booker's career in Phoenix? Now, I know you're a Knicks guy, and I'm sure you'd love to see him in the blue and orange. But Draymond Green comments aside, I mean, this may have reinvigorated Devin Booker's love for Phoenix because you see guys get attached to the teams that drafted them all the time. And even if they do leave via free agency or trade, they have a heavy heart about it. I personally think that this has saved Devin Booker's career because the Suns are showing they can compete in the West over a full season. I mean, I just wanted to see where you are on that.
I couldn't agree more with you. I feel like not only did it save his career, but it re-energized his love for the city of Phoenix and for playing ball. Considering he didn't want to do the Olympics and he didn't want to do the World Championship games last summer, and he kind of got nicked for that, saying that young guys should definitely want to take the experience. Well, he's definitely making the most of his opportunity in the bubble, showing that he's arrived on the main stage. He's kind of, I don't know about you guys, but to me, he's taken over the Trae Young spot where Trae Young got all the love all season, all the admiration, but he's not in the bubble. Devin Booker is. So now Devin Booker's getting all that love. The Suns are competing. No one saw them being this well. And it goes back to coaching. Most of his time in there, he was getting a new coach every year. And someone like Monty, who's great at building helping young players' confidence, kind of what the Knicks needed, but I think Tibbs is going to be all right. But it comes down to coaching. You can't keep having a, revolving door of coaches coming in and then expect a superstar to want to stick around. But I feel like Monty's the right guy to turn that ship in Phoenix around.
I mean, yeah, it's already showing. I mean, him and Booker. Booker, you can make the case right now that he's a top 15 player in the league, and some of the guys around him are playing really well too. I mean, it's one of the things that we might have you back on in the future for, Jason, is that in the Western Conference for next year looks absolutely insane. You're going to have 15 teams that all think that they can make the playoffs, which I don't think has happened in my lifetime, where there's 15 teams legitimately thinking they could make it next year. But right now, as it stands, we'll see what happens with some of these teams, but it's incredibly, incredibly tight. But that said, let's take a quick break. A quick break on the Western Conference to look over in the East, because I think there's one pretty obvious surprise team, and I'm just going to let Jason gloat before we get our Jason Goldstein, have a minute of gloating here, because the Nets are playing some pretty good basketball in the bubble.
I'm not going to gloat, okay? There's really, I mean, it's exciting and thrilling, but I'm not going to gloat about the 7th seed, just considering with the injuries, the turmoil, the fact that almost 2/3 of the roster got sick with COVID-19 at one point or another. The job that Jacque Vaughn has done with this makeshift roster down in Orlando, amounting to a 5-2 record with very impressive wins over the Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Clippers. And we talked a little bit before the show, Jason, about how you said they were going to go 0-8, and I was going to just give you a little bit of a ribbing for it. I was expecting them to maybe win 2 games, so they've surpassed my expectations, but so much good has come out of what the Nets are doing. Karis LeVert showing he could be the third option on that team next year with KD and Kyrie. Jared Allen, double-double machine, is passing out of the post, the three-point shooting of Joe Harris, and then the emergence of some of these young guys like Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot, Chris Chiozza, Tyler Johnson's resurgence. So I'm going to try and stay as objective as possible. I think the Nets are a better matchup for the Raptors, where they might actually win a couple games in the series. So I just want to see when it was that you realized that the Nets were actually going to be competitive in the bubble and your thoughts on what the team has done.
Honestly, it was early on. It was when they were competitive against the Bucks. And it was like in the second quarter when Giannis looked like he was getting frustrated and the Nets were not backing down. I was like, oh, okay, they're trying to send a message here. They're like, okay, we're destined to be the 8th seed, but we're going to let you guys know it won't be a cakewalk in the bubble. It won't be a cakewalk in Milwaukee. It won't be a cakewalk in Brooklyn. It's going to be competitive basketball. And I was really surprised by that. But like you said, Vaughn has got these guys motivated, and LeVert is definitely showing that, hey, listen, you don't need a trade for a third superstar. I'm the guy. Between me and Dinwiddie next season, don't worry about that. We got that covered. So I definitely think not only the Nets have a good showing, but they earned a little bit of respect from a lot of the teams they played. Right now they're 5-2, and technically, I thought the Nets were more so going to be more of that Orlando loss than anything else, but they definitely rebounded from that Orlando loss. I don't really take much from the Celtics game because that was a back-to-back, and once we get to playoffs, they won't be back-to-back. So